I was checking emails between shifts at the Kandahar base when I saw the subject line. Let's be adults about this. It was from my wife, Diane. I'd been deployed for 4 months, leading missions with the 82nd Airborne, when she decided to end our 13-year marriage with a 3-sentence email and a PDF divorce attachment. Just like that. No conversation, no warning, no second chances. But that wasn't even the worst of it. In the same email, Diane casually mentioned she had already emptied our joint account and moved her new boyfriend, some guy named Kyle, into our home back in Spokane, the house I'd paid for through 3 deployments. The home I thought I was protecting by serving halfway across the world. I stared at the screen in silence, the sounds of the mess hall fading into a dull hum. Then I closed my laptop, took a cold shower in the communal stall, and headed out for patrol. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I didn't break. That's not what soldiers do. When I returned to my bunk that night, I typed one word in reply understood. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew this Diane had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because I may not start fights, but I sure as hell know how to finish them. I met Diane in the spring of 2010 at a barbecue in Coeur d'Alene. I was home between deployments, staying with my buddy Matt. She was finishing up nursing school, full of charm and plans for the future. We clicked instantly. I proposed 8 months later under the old oak tree behind Matt's cabin. She said yes before I even finished asking. The early years were good. Diane said she was proud to be a military wife, though she never really understood the job. Her father was a lone officer, her brother a pharmacist, folks who never missed a holiday dinner or a weekend at the lake. I knew it would be hard for her, being married to a man who was more often overseas than home, but she said she could handle it. We bought our house in Spokane in 2014, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a backyard and a picket fence. The VA loan was in my name, but I added Diane to the deed. It felt right at the time. My dad always told me, when you build a home with someone, you build it all the way. My parents passed within a few years of each other. Dad from a heart attack while shoveling snow, Mom from lung cancer, though she'd never smoked a day in her life. They left me enough to clear our student loans and pad our savings. Between my military salary and Diane's office job at a dental clinic, we weren't rich, but we were steady. Or so I thought. Over the course of 4 deployments, 2 to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan, I started noticing changes. Each time I came home, Diane seemed just a little more distant. She'd find small reasons to stay out of the house. Girls' nights, weekend trips, new clothes, a gym membership she rarely used. One time she flat out said, "I didn't sign up to be a military wife forever." I understood. I really did. But the Army wasn't just a job to me. It was my purpose. It was where I felt needed, respected. So I stayed in, and she slowly faded away. The last year before my final deployment, something shifted. Diane would get annoyed when I called during her outings. She'd joke about how her friend Michelle had divorced her husband and was living her best life. I suggested counseling. She said we were just going through a phase. But my gut told me it was more than that. And in the Army, when your gut talks, you listen. I didn't accuse her. I didn't snoop or beg for passwords. That's not who I am. Instead, I quietly started preparing. I rented a small storage unit across town where I secured my birth certificate, our marriage license, my mom's silver, and my grandfather's old pocket watch. I opened a new bank account and began directing a small portion of my paycheck there. Not enough to raise red flags, just enough to keep me from being wiped out, if something ever happened. Turns out, that was the smartest move I ever made. The night I shipped out, Diane hugged me like she was saying goodbye to a coworker. Her eyes were dry. "No, I'll miss you. No, be safe. Just, you'll text when you land, right?" That should have told me everything. 4 months later, I was in Kandahar eating powdered eggs when her email came through. Divorce. Emptied the bank. Moved in with Kyle. And somehow I wasn't surprised. What Diane didn't know was that I wasn't coming back broke, and I wasn't coming back unprepared. I hadn't made noise, but I'd made moves. She thought she was pulling the rug out from under me. But the house was still in my name. The savings she didn't know about were still mine. and the documents she needed to finalize her plan. Well, they were locked away where only I could reach them. She thought she'd win this by being quiet and fast. She didn't know that I'd already won by being quiet and ready. 2 weeks after Diane's email, I was sitting in the mess hall in Kandahar, halfway through a plate of scrambled eggs and cold sausage, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Bank notification. A large transfer had just been made from our joint account. I opened the app. My stomach tightened, though 88,500. Gun. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize. I refreshed the screen. What remained? $22.37. After 13 years of marriage and sacrifice, she'd drained every penny. That wasn't just our savings. It was our future. The money we'd set aside for repairs, emergencies, and, one day, retirement. I didn't say a word. Just set down my fork and walked out into the dry desert heat. Later that night, I waited for a free terminal in the base's phone center and called the bank. The customer service rep, some kid named Ryan, confirmed everything. The withdrawals had started the day after I deployed. Small amounts at first, then larger. The final blow had landed just that morning. She'd been preparing her escape while I was on the other side of the planet dodging rocket attacks. I hung up and leaned against the hallway wall, the kind of cold silence falling over me that doesn't come from temperature, but from realization. My marriage wasn't dying. It had been murdered, slow and calculated. Back at my bunk, Wilson, my closest friend in the unit, looked up from his copy of American Sniper. "You look like someone just stole your truck." I stared at him. My wife emptied our accounts and moved her new boyfriend into my house. He set the book down without blinking. "What's your plan?" No pity. No useless advice. Just that one question. That's why I trusted Wilson. I didn't have an answer right then. But by sunrise, I would. I opened my laptop, connected to the secure network, and logged into the home security system I'd installed 2 years ago. Something told me Diane had forgotten I still had remote access. The camera feed popped up. There he was, some guy I didn't recognize, walking my dog, sipping coffee from my favorite mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt like he owned the place. Diane was in the kitchen I'd renovated with my own hands, laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. I felt focus. That night, I made a list, a mission plan, really contact James Porter, my old Army buddy who now practiced law back in Washington. Review the VA loan documents, especially anything Diane might have updated while I was away. Call Master Sergeant Lewis about emergency leave protocol. Check the military pension accounts. Make sure nothing had been tampered with. By the time dawn broke over the Afghan desert, I'd sent James an encrypted email. Subject line, need legal help, discreet and urgent. His reply came an hour later, call me. Secure line, today. The rest of that week passed in a blur. I kept my mouth shut and my boots laced. I pulled double shifts just to keep my hands busy. But mentally, I was already back home, planning every step. Diane thought I'd be stranded, helpless. She forgot I'd spent 20 years designing contingency plans in hostile territory. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to warn her. She'd made her move. Now it was my turn. 2 months later, I stepped off the plane in Washington State under a cloudy gray sky. I didn't tell Diane I was coming home. I didn't call, didn't text. I didn't even go back to our house. Instead, I checked into a quiet motel under a different name and called James, my old Army buddy turned attorney. We met at a diner 10 miles outside Spokane. James looked up as I walked in. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel like it too." I answered, sliding into the booth. He handed me a thick folder. Everything we talked about. House deed, bank records, VA loan documents, and this. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and laid it in front of me. "She refinanced the house, John. Took out $330,000. I stared at the paper. "That's impossible. My name's the only one on the mortgage. It's a VA loan. She can't touch it without my consent." James tapped the signature line. "She forged it. Tried to match your handwriting, but your middle initial is wrong. Sloppy work. And look here." She listed her boyfriend, Jeremy, as a co-applicant. I took a deep breath. She forged my signature, put my house in debt, cleared out our accounts, and moved in a guy with a rap sheet. James nodded. Jeremy's got 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. Oh, and your truck. He's been driving it. Got pulled over 2 days ago. Vehicle's impounded. He didn't even have a valid license. I let that sink in. I wasn't just dealing with a messy divorce. This was criminal. What are my options? I asked. James leaned in. First, we freeze everything. Property, accounts, assets. Then we hit the bank with a fraud claim. I've already drafted a police report about the forged documents. The next day, I went to the bank and met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance. I showed him my military ID, my real signature, and a copy of the forged one. His face went pale. I need to report this immediately. I already have, I said flatly. Police and legal counsel are involved. That night, Diane texted me, "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I filed a legal motion at the county clerk's office contesting the refinance due to fraud and placing a restriction that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. I wanted that on record before she tried to sell the house out from under me. Later that evening, I got another voicemail. "John, we need to talk." The bank's saying something about fraud. If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults. Like adults. Those were the exact words she used when she emailed me divorce papers while I was on deployment. Still, I didn't respond. James called me the next day. The bank froze the refinance funds, but half the money's already gone. Where? I asked. He hesitated. 14,600 transferred to someone named Daniel Spencer. You know him? No. Should I? He's a real estate agent, and not a clean one. Works fast cash deals. And here's the kicker. He's done 3 deals with Jeremy in the past 2 years. I think they're planning to sell your house. I rubbed my temples. So this wasn't just Diane leaving me for some guy. This was planned. A setup. James nodded. It's a scam, and you're not the only victim. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. This crosses state lines and involves military assets. They're interested. That night, I sat alone in the motel room, looking at the security footage from my house. Jeremy, still in my sweatshirt, was showing some stranger around my kitchen. Diane wasn't in the video, but her purse was on the counter. They weren't hiding. They thought I was still overseas, powerless. They were wrong. And they were about to learn what happens when you try to rob a soldier who spent his entire life learning how to finish what others start. The next morning, I woke early in the motel room, heart steady for the first time in weeks. Diane thought I was meeting her in Riverfront Park to talk things through. Instead, I was parked down the block from our house with James beside me, sipping black coffee and watching the driveway through a pair of binoculars like we were back on patrol in Kandahar. At exactly 9:45 a.m., Diane left the house in her Subaru and drove off in the direction of the park. "Bates moving," James muttered. 5 minutes later, a silver Toyota Corolla with a real estate logo on the door pulled up. Daniel Spencer, the so-called agent, and right behind him, Jeremy. We watched them shake hands, then disappear inside my house like they owned it. "They're early," James said, pulling out his phone. "They're confident," I corrected. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had installed an entire home security system last year, both inside and out. Cameras in the living room, kitchen, even one facing the backyard. All of it synced to a private cloud server. I pulled out my own phone, opened the security app, and tapped into the live feed. James leaned in as the image sharpened. Spencer was snapping pictures of the living room, while Jeremy gestured toward the kitchen island, like a man giving a tour. "Here's where we list it," Spencer said, 470K asking. "We'll expect a cash offer around 420. Everybody walks away happy." Jeremy smirked. "And what about the husband?" Spencer waved a hand. "Military guys. Always too proud to fight. Give him a small settlement, he'll disappear." James didn't even bother hiding his smile. He was already recording the screen from his phone. "Gotcha," I muttered. I forwarded the footage to Agent Patel at the FBI with a short message. "Happening now." 30 minutes later, our quiet street filled with unmarked cars and federal agents in windbreakers. Jeremy and Spencer were let out in handcuffs, while neighbors peeked from behind curtains. I stayed parked down the block, just watched. Diane came flying up minutes later in a panic. She stood in our yard with her hands over her mouth as agents carried boxes from the house. My phone rang. Agent Patel. "We got them, Mr. Briggs. Multiple charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, real estate fraud, and identity theft. Your footage sealed it." "And Diane?" There was a pause. "That depends on how much she knew and what you want to do next." I didn't answer right away. I watched her standing there, confused, scared, realizing her little web had just collapsed. "I want what's right," I finally said. The case moved quickly after that. Spencer and Jeremy both took plea deals. Turned out this wasn't their first rodeo. They'd targeted 11 military families across 3 states. Same pattern: find the lonely spouse, exploit the marriage, extract the assets, vanish. Diane denied knowing anything. Claimed she'd been manipulated. That Jeremy convinced her I was hiding money and planning to leave her with nothing. Maybe it was true. Maybe not. I'll never know. But she signed a full confession for the forged refinance. Gave up any claim to the house, my military pension, and agreed to return every cent that could be recovered. In exchange, I didn't press charges. 6 months after she sent that email from Spokane to my inbox in Kandahar, our divorce was finalized. No fault. No settlement. Just done. Agent Patel called me that same day. "We wanted you to know," she said. "Because of your case, we were able to recover nearly $1.4 million for the other families. You didn't just protect yourself. You helped a lot of people." I hung up and stepped outside onto the porch of my rental cabin. 10 acres in the Montana woods. A creek running out back. No neighbors. Just me and my German Shepherd Scout. I hadn't planned on becoming the guy who exposed a criminal ring. I just wanted peace. Funny how life works out. And for the first time in years, I was finally building something no one could steal. Not Diane. Not Jeremy. Not even fate. Just mine. 6 months after that stormy day in Spokane, the dust had finally settled. But the story was far from forgotten. The federal investigation into Jeremy and Spencer's scheme had revealed a tangled web stretching across 3 states. They weren't just charming grifters. They were seasoned predators, targeting military families while their loved ones were deployed. The FBI confirmed that 12 households had been affected, some nearly bankrupted. But thanks to the timing and the evidence I had gathered, the case against them was ironclad. I didn't celebrate the court dates or their sentencing. I didn't even attend. But when Agent Patel called and told me Spencer had taken 12 years and Jeremy 8, I paused. Let that number sit with me. I thanked her, not out of triumph, but out of quiet closure. As for Diane, my ex-wife, the legal consequences were softer but no less lasting. She claimed ignorance, insisted she was manipulated, said she never knew what Jeremy and Daniel Spencer were really planning. I couldn't be sure if that was true or just another layer of the lie. But we reached a settlement. She forfeited any right to my military pension, surrendered her share of the house, and signed a full written confession acknowledging the forgery and financial misconduct. In return, I chose not to press criminal charges. Some folks told me I was too lenient, that I should have let her rot, but I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. I was tired of being tangled in her choices. I wanted out, entirely. After the divorce was finalized, I put the house on the market. I couldn't live in it. Not with the memories, not with the betrayal soaked into the walls. It sold within 2 weeks, and I used the money to purchase a small cabin outside Missoula, Montana. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a wood-burning stove, 10 acres of peace and quiet. There was a creek running out back and no one within shouting distance. Just me, the trees, and a dog named Scout, a retired German Shepherd I adopted from a local veteran program. I officially took early retirement from the Army. 20 years had been enough. I'd given my body my time, and more than my fair share of sacrifice. Now, it was time to rebuild something that was just mine. I found part-time work doing woodworking and home repairs for nearby ranchers and retirees. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. My hands stayed busy, and the quiet gave my mind room to breathe. I learned to fix what was broken, not just furniture, but myself. One crisp October evening, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a woman in Fort Worth, Texas. Her husband, a Navy officer, had been deployed when Spencer and Jeremy tried to run the same scam on her. But the FBI had caught it in time, and they told her my case was the turning point. "You don't know me." The letter read, "But you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away." I read it twice, then pinned it to the side of the fridge. Sometimes, when the nights get long or the ache of old injuries creeps in, I look at that letter. It reminds me that even when life falls apart, you still get to choose how you rebuild. You can choose bitterness, or you can choose purpose. Last I heard, Diane moved back to Oregon. Got a receptionist job at another dental office. Maybe she's starting over. I don't wish her harm, but I sure don't miss her. As for me, I've found something better than revenge. I've found peace, and I'm not giving it up for anyone. 1 year to the day after that cold, heartless email from Diane, I stood on the porch of my cabin, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over Montana's pine-covered hills. Scout, my old shepherd, lay by my side, ears twitching at birdsong. It wasn't the life I thought I'd have, but it was the life I chose to rebuild. There were no headlines about what happened, no parades, no front-page justice. But the truth had come out. Jeremy and Spencer were behind bars. Diane had moved on. And me, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. Slower, quieter, but with intention. The cabin, the land, the freedom, it all came at a cost. But I paid it, and I'd pay it again for the peace I've found. Sometimes, the worst betrayal becomes the beginning of your best chapter. When everything falls apart, it forces you to ask what really matters. For me, it wasn't money. It wasn't revenge. It was dignity. It was the quiet strength to stand tall, to rebuild, and to walk forward. Not bitter, but better. If this story resonated with you, tell us in the comments, what lesson did you take from it? And if you believe in standing up for what's right, even when it hurts, subscribe and join us on this journey. There are more real stories coming, stories that matter.